Welcome back to the deep dive. We've got a real mix for you today. I mean, looking through the sources, it feels like we're tracking multiple global crises breaking all at once.
Yeah, it's quite the collection. We're seeing everything from, major natural disasters to big political shakeups and some really concerning humanitarian situations.
Exactly. Category 4 storms, election shifting power in Europe and South America, and then these deeply worrying stories about vulnerability and protection, or the lack of it.
It is a genuinely chaotic stack, and I think the theme that jumps out immediately is vulnerability. How quickly things can break down climate, social trust, government accountability, you name it.
So our job here isn't just to read headlines.
No, definitely not. We need to kind of synthesize these for you, pull out the key insights, find the connections, especially how these big global forces like resource demand or political shifts are actually hitting people on the ground.
Okay, let's unpack this.
Where do we start?
I think we have to start with the most immediate, the most physical crisis, which is Hurricane Melissa. The latest is it's ramped up fast. Powerful Category 4, maybe hitting Cat 5 soon. Winds are at 145 miles per hour.
And what's really terrifying, according to the experts, is this combination. It's not just the raw power, the rapid intensification. It's how incredibly slowly it's moving, like 5 miles per hour, a crawl.
Just crawling.
Which means it just sits there, punishing the same areas for days. And the rain. That's the other catastrophic part.
Yeah, the rain figures are just staggering. They're talking up to 30 inches for Jamaica and southern Hispaniola, Haiti, and the DR. Some mountain spots could even see, 40 inches? That's nearly a meter of rain.
It's almost unimaginable, and we're already seeing the impact, right? The sources say at least 4 people killed across the region already, nearly 200 homes damaged in the DR, and over 500,000 people there lost their water supply.
So Jamaica ordered mandatory evacuations, especially for low-lying places like Kingston, the capital, and Port Royal.
But this is where you see that social vulnerability piece kicking in, isn't it? The resistance to actually evacuating.
Exactly. We've got specific accounts like Anne Reed Chamberlain and Derek Powell in Port Royal. They refused to go to the official shelters. And it wasn't just stubbornness.
No, they had reasons, bad experiences.
Yeah. They mentioned what happened 21 years ago. They felt unsafe. Things got stolen. Deep distrust from a past failure.
And that's the critical link, isn't it? The government provides the shelters, mandates safety, but because of that historical failure, that lack of trust going back decades, people are literally choosing to face a Category 4 storm over the system meant to protect them.
That past failure is directly creating present danger. It's stark.
It really is.
Okay, so that's the loud crisis, Melissa. But you mentioned vulnerability. There are these other slow burn catastrophes happening almost silently. Let's talk about the uncontacted Indigenous peoples.
Right. This is deeply concerning. The scale alone is, well, it's shocking. At least 196 identified uncontacted groups, mostly in the Amazon.
And these aren't lost tribes, like in old movies.
No, absolutely not. They're contemporary societies. They know about the outside world. They choose isolation because contact, historically, has meant violence and deadly diseases for them. Generations of it.
Their vulnerability is almost total. I mean, the sources say a common cold could wipe out an entire group within a year.
Exactly. And their traditional defenses, bows and arrows, they're just no match for guns, for bulldozers.
And the threats are everywhere. Logging affects nearly 2/3 of them. Mining impacts 40%. Agribusiness, 20%.
Yeah, plus organized crime, even missionaries sometimes. The pressure is immense. Experts are genuinely warning about a potential, quote, silent genocide. Maybe half these groups gone within a decade.
It's horrifying. And then there's the legal side, this idea of free, prior, and informed consent, FTIC. It's supposed to protect their land rights.
But there's the paradox. You can't get their informed consent without contacting them, and contact itself is potentially lethal for them.
So the experts are pushing for no contact, no-go zones. Just leave them completely alone.
That's the policy recommendation, yes. But, you have to ask, with global demand for resources being what it is that policy truly sustainable? Or is it just delaying the inevitable?
Here's where it gets really interesting. Because our consumption is directly linked.
It absolutely is. It's a hard truth. The sources point to nickel mining, right? For electric vehicle batteries, part of the green transition, happening right on the land of the Honggana Manyawa in Indonesia.
So green energy for us means potential destruction for them.
Precisely. And it's not just nickel. Think about illegal gold mining in Yanomami territory, Brazil and Venezuela. They use mercury, which poisons the rivers these communities depend on entirely.
So our global development, even when it seems sustainable for us, is imposing these hidden, potentially existential costs on the world's most isolated people.
It's a profound moral challenge, and it connects back to resource pressures, which often fuels political instability too.
Which is a good place to shift gears. Let's look at those political structures, how they allocate resources or fail to protect people. Argentina's midterms seem like a big deal.
Yeah, definitely making waves. President Javier Milei's party, La Libertad Avanza, got over 40% in the Chamber of Deputies vote. He's calling it a turning point.
Giving him more power to push his economic agenda.
Exactly. And it's a pretty drastic agenda. We're talking about major downsizing of the state, huge cuts to public spending, freezing public works, deregulation, what the sources call painful economic reforms.
Painful for who, though? That means real impacts on public services, jobs.
Absolutely. But there's catch. The turnout for this election, lowest in 40 years, just under 68%. So while it's a victory, he still needs to build alliances, particularly with the center-right, to actually pass these laws. It's not a blank check.
And this is all happening after that big currency run before the election. Plus, there was that warning from former U.S. President Trump about future aid being conditional on Milei staying strong. So external pressures, too.
It's definitely part of the picture. Now, compare that economic shock therapy approach in Argentina with the political sort of fragmentation we're seeing in the Netherlands.
Right, the coalition government collapsed. Geert Wilders, the anti-immigration lawmaker, pulled his party out. Snap election coming.
And experts are flagging this as, part of that broader trend, the steady and global rise of the far right.
Wilders is campaigning hard on stopping asylum seekers altogether. That, plus housing shortages, healthcare costs, those are the big issues.
But here's the potential gridlock. Even if Wilders' party wins the most seats, the other major parties have basically said they won't form a coalition with him.
So what happens then? A minority government, someone else trying to form a coalition? Sounds unstable.
It could be very unstable. And if the government can't effectively tackle those core problems, migration, housing, healthcare, because of political deadlock, well, that creates new kinds of vulnerability for ordinary people, doesn't it? The system itself becomes fragile.
Yeah, a failure to govern is its own kind of crisis. Which actually leads us nicely into talking about protection, or the lack of it, maybe closer to home for some listeners. Let's look at the UK housing law.
Ah, yes, a WOBS law. Named after the little boy who tragically died. It just came into effect this month.
What does it do exactly?
It forces social landlords in England councils, housing associations, to act fast on damp and mold. They have 10 working days to inspect after a report, and then just 5 days to make the hazard safe.
That sounds like a really important step forward. Definitely needed.
It is a major win for tenants' rights, driven by tragedy, as you said. But there's a significant gap.
Which is?
It only covers the social rented sector, people renting from private landlords. There are 4.6 million households in that situation. This specific law, these timelines, they don't apply to them. Not yet, anyway.
So millions are still left without that specific legal protection.
That's right. And if you think back to the Jamaica example, where past failures created present vulnerability, well, this feels like a potential future failure in social protection being written right now for private renters. They're still waiting for that security.
It highlights how uneven protection can be. Now, let's look at protection at its absolute extreme edge. The situation in the Syrian camps, like Raj, holding IS suspects and their families.
Yeah, the source gives us this glimpse inside Raj camp through the story of a mother named Aslam. It's just heartbreaking.
She denies actually joining IS herself, but she admits she took her children into IS territory. Her eldest daughter was killed there in Baghouz by an explosion.
Just unimaginable trauma. And now she's in this awful dilemma. She apparently turned down an offer to send her children back to the UK.
Why?
Because they won't go without her, and presumably she can't go or won't be taken. But the conditions are terrible. Her kids have health problems. They get rocks thrown at them at the camp school. She's been called an apostate for even wanting to leave. The isolation, the fear must be immense.
And the camp manager confirms the scale of the problem. So something like 75% of the people in Raj still hold on to IS ideology. It's a volatile, radicalized environment, even more so in the bigger Al-Hol camp nearby.
It just shows how complex vulnerability is. It's not just one thing. It's exposure to the elements, like in Jamaica. It's political deadlock, like maybe in the Netherlands. It's lack of legal safety nets, like for UK renters. And it's this profound isolation driven by ideology, like in those Syrian camps, layers upon layers.
Okay, so we've seen all these hidden or systemic vulnerabilities, let's contrast that with two very visible events, things that grab headlines and involve huge amounts of money or attention. First, Romania. They just consecrated this massive new cathedral.
Yeah, the People's Salvation Cathedral in Bucharest,
Yeah.
or the National Cathedral. It's now officially the world's biggest Orthodox church. Huge scale, over 125 meters high, room for 5,000 worshipers.
As costs.
Around 270 million, mostly public money.
Wow. And that's controversial, right?
Yeah, highly controversial. Critics point out Romania has one of the biggest budget deficits in the EU. They're asking, shouldn't that public money have gone into schools, hospitals, things they say are desperately needed?
So it's a question of priorities. Massive investment in spiritual infrastructure versus, say, civic infrastructure.
Exactly. A very visible symbol, but raising questions about resource allocation.
And then contrast that grandeur with a different kind of high-profile event involving value.
Yeah.
The Louvre heist in Paris.
Right, a complete failure of protection, but this time for priceless cultural artifacts. It reads like something out of a heist movie.
Tell us how they did it.
4 masked individuals dressed like maintenance workers. They apparently used an electrically powered ladder mounted on a truck to get into the Apollo Gallery.
Inside the Louvre, just like that.
Seems so. They grabbed 9 pieces of imperial jewelry, tiaras, brooches, necklaces, earrings. Then they made their getaway on scooters.
Scooters. It sounds almost easy.
Alarmingly so. The efficiency suggests a major breakdown in basic security at one of the world's most famous museums, entrusted with irreplaceable treasures. Another system failure, really, though thankfully this one involved jewels, not lives.
Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground. Hurricane failures, political shifts, silent genocides, housing laws, camp dilemmas, cathedrals, heists. So what does this all mean?
Well, tying it together, that thread of vulnerability really holds. Whether it's Jamaicans facing a storm without trusting the shelters, or renters without legal deadlines for mold, or indigenous groups facing extinction from resource extraction. It all comes back to how power, wealth, and systems interact with people who are often left defenseless or underserved.
And you see these stark contrasts.
You really do. You see vast sums spent on, say, the National Cathedral in Romania. At the same time, resource extraction for things we want, like nickel for green electric cars, is actively endangering entire cultures, like the Hangana Maniawa.
That parallel between the lack of trust in Jamaican shelters after 21 years and the lack of protection now for 4.6 million private renters in the UK,
Yeah.
it shows how these failures echo.
Exactly. The systems of protection are just deeply uneven, patchy.
So maybe the final thought for you listening is this. When we look at these big global projects, these resource decisions, how do we actually weigh the cost? The economic cost of a cathedral, the environmental cost of mining, the benefit of green tech. How do we weigh all that against the long-term cost to stability, to survival, for the communities pushed to the absolute margins?
It's about where we choose to invest, not just money, but attention and protection. Who gets protected, who gets prioritized, and who pays the hidden price? That seems to be the question running through all these stories.
Something definitely worth mulling over. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive.